Surprises, disappointments, and a whole load of lambs. This week I'm chatting all about the teens in testing, so get ready because you've been summoned to the Steward's office. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Sarah and this week we have officially finished Formula 1 testing. 2 Bahrain tests have happened and the next stop for the teams is going to be Australia for the first race of the season. So I thought instead of just doing a breakdown of everything that happened during testing, because we've had a lot of it over the last couple of weeks, I thought I'd just chat about what teams are where. Am I disappointed? Am I surprised? What teams do I think are going to do well? And which teams do I think are going to struggle? There's a lot to chat about. So let's just dive right into it. And I thought I would just start with my disappointments. Let's get it out of the way with. And I don't think it's going to surprise literally anyone who watches Formula 1 that at the top of my disappointments is Aston Martin. Now, they had issues in Barcelona. They only ran for a day and a tiny bit instead of 3 days that they could have run, which is an issue in and of itself. But the issues that they had that kind of showed up in Barcelona with reliability and things like that, they made themselves known in Bahrain. There's no other way to put it. There are huge issues right now with their engine reliability more than anything, to the point that on day 3 of testing, which was the last day in Bahrain, it was the second set of Bahrain tests, they only managed to do 6 laps, which is crazy. We're in a new set of regulations in Formula 1. It's the very last day of testing we're going to get before we go into the season, and you've only managed to get in 6 laps. Now, the day before that, on day 2 of the second test, Fernando Alonso was in the car, ended up in the garage for a really long time, and Honda released a statement the next day saying it was because of a battery issue. It was an anomaly they found, and that the Honda team were back at the factory running through simulations to try and figure it out. But between trying to figure that out and a lack of spare parts, Lance Stroll was not going to have much running in the last day. And I think it was Pedro de la Rosa who said 6 laps was actually the goal for that day because of the issues they were having, which just feels insane to me. This is a team that over the 3 sets of testing that they've had, and bear in mind over those 3 sets the teams were able to do a maximum of 9 days, they really didn't get to do any kind of long runs properly, not in the way other teams were. And there were teams that were able to do the Bahrain Grand Prix distance multiple times and got so much data from that. It's going to be really useful going into the season. But for Aston Martin not to really have long run data, reliability constantly cropping up, I don't think in the first test in Bahrain they were really able to go at full speed either. They're going into the season pretty blind. There's not a lot for them to go on, and I think it's going to have to be a lot of learning in practice sessions and the races to figure out what's going on with the car and the engine now. Honda have said they've kind of figured out what the issue was and they fixed it. I am not going to hold my breath right now. I think we need to give it a little bit more time to see what's going on there. But I think there were really high expectations. This was the first Adrian Newey designed Aston Martin car since he had joined the team, and then this year he's obviously been bumped up into being team principal. But the design of the car heavily influenced by Adrian Newey, and you could see that in the design. It does have this quite drastic, dramatic design, and it had a lot of people talking in the paddock over tested. And I think people thought, okay, yeah, maybe Aston Martin can start being really, really competitive at the front. Did I have a good feeling when they announced the Honda partnership? I can't lie, I did not. I had and still have my reservations. I know they have built championship winning engines before, and it's not that long ago that they were winning championships with Red Bull, but I just did not have a good feeling that this was going to be smooth sailing, especially at the start, and that seems to be what's happened. The team have said they do feel like they are going to be able to turn things around. Nothing that's wrong with their car is unsolvable, which is always great, but they have said it won't be quick. It's not an overnight fix. It is going to take time. Engine problems aside, they are going to struggle to get a really good reading on then the car design because they're not getting that much running in, so they don't really know how well both of those things are working. There have been issues with cooling on the engine, the amount of air vents and cooling vents they had to open on the car to make sure that the engine was at a good temperature. There are just a lot of issues right now. The drivers are not happy, understandably so. Fernando Alonso just looking off into the distance when his car stops. Lance Stroll just yeah, very disgruntled in media. It's not looking great for them right now. I hope they can turn it around at some point in the season, but not the way I think anyone thought this season was going to start for Aston Martin, at least not as badly as it has. Second disappointment, and I didn't really know whether to put this team in here, but hear me out, it is Williams. Now, I'm not super disappointed in them. I think they got in some really great running in both Bahrain tests after missing out all of Barcelona. They couldn't make it to Barcelona at all. So I think reliability-wise, they're doing great, and the running has allowed them to learn a lot about the car. So I'm not disappointed in that respect. The reason I kind of put them on this list, though, was because I was just expecting a little bit more from them. They had said in 2025 they had stopped the 2025 development of the car super early so they could get ready for the 2026 regulations. So, you know, their car would be the first one ready and that it would be competitive. I don't think there was anything super standout for me with the car. I think, like I said, good reliability. I think it's doing decent, but I think there are some other teams in the midfield that just look way stronger, and I wish Williams were up there as one of them. I don't know. I don't think they're gonna have the kind of season that they did in 2025, and I might be wrong, and I hope I am, because it was brilliant watching Williams last season. But yeah, a little bit disappointed there. Let's go on to surprises though. Now, there were two teams in disappointment, three in my surprises, and these are good surprises now. First one up is Red Bull and their engine. This is the first year that they have made their own engine, and they've done that in partnership with Ford. And I think everyone was a little bit skeptical about how this was going to go, only because it's difficult to build an engine. It's not easy, as seen by Honda. It's not easy, and Red Bull have never done this before. So I think we were all expecting a couple of reliability issues. I think the team itself were expecting them, but the car was actually really reliable, and that's great to see. They do seem to have a really strong package this year, and I'm glad that the engine is reliable, because you want as many teams to be as competitive as they can be at the top of the field. So yeah, Red Bull seemingly right now are quite strong. Really glad that the engine hasn't caused some issues, and that has then trickled down into VCarb, who also have that great reliability because they're sharing the same engine. The other team I was surprised at was Audi, and that is also in part because of their engine. Now, Audi has taken over Sauber. They still have the same driver lineup with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto, but they opted not to have the Ferrari engine like Sauber did. They wanted to create their own engine. Once again, was a little bit skeptical about how that was going to go, but yeah, seems really good, and they seem to be doing pretty decent with their lap times and things like that as well, which is great to see. So yeah, nice to see Audi doing okay. And finally on this good surprises list is Ferrari. Guys, look, I was not expecting literally anything from them. I think it's best as a Ferrari fan not to expect anything. You just go in, you're hoping that the car just goes, that it'll be okay. Ferrari were a huge surprise for me in testing for a few reasons, right? One, reliability wasn't a massive issue for them. They went through the entirety of Barcelona testing and the first Bahrain test with the exact same engine with no issues, which is incredible. They did not have to change that engine out. Both drivers did the 6 days of testing with one engine, which was great. Second Bahrain test, there were a couple of issues that cropped up. There was some more time spent in the garage, no stops on track at least, but nothing that the drivers and the team seemed to be panicked about, were worried about, or anything like that, and they were solved and eventually got back out on track, even if it did take long. The other thing I was surprised at was the speed of the car. Now, I do think compared to some of the other top teams, they might have pushed a little bit more in testing. This was pretty good for Ferrari. I think it actually looked decent. The car looked really good on track. And the main thing that really stood out to me was the fact that both of the drivers actually seemed to be really happy and positive with the car, which is such a good sign. I think you could tell in last year's preseason test that neither driver was too happy. Lewis coming into a new team and a new philosophy, you know, you could tell he was struggling to adjust, but Charles Leclerc also was not over the moon with the car. This season, both the drivers in testing have just seemed more lighthearted, I guess. Like, they're not as concerned. They're enjoying their time in the car and around the paddock. And when they're talking to the media, it all seems super, super positive, which I am hoping means that the car is comfortable to drive and that it's doing what they want. Fred Vasseur had said that what they had seen in the wind tunnel and all the data and simulations, that was really correlating to what they were seeing on track, which is a super good sign for the team and for any team. You want all of that data to align because you know that things are working correctly. So I'm happy to hear that. However, I am not getting my hopes up. I don't think we've seen the most of McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes. And just in general with Ferrari, it's better not to get our hopes up. So surprised by them, good testing for them, but we're just leaving it at that. We're not saying anything else. Teams that I think are gonna do well this season though, as usual, I think the top four are going to be fine. Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren. I think they're going to be absolutely fun. They're going to be super consistent. They're going to be strong. They'll be at the top of the field. What order that will be in, I couldn't tell you. Whispers before the season and during testing were that Mercedes will be the fastest car. I could see that happening. I do think they were holding stuff back, but we will wait and see it. I am hoping, if nothing else, there's going to be close between those four teams and we don't have one team that runs away and the other three are kind of scrabbling in the background. But yeah, those four teams I don't think are going to have an issue this season, fingers crossed. The other two teams though, so one of them is Haas, and partly that's because Haas had brilliant reliability. They got some amazing running in during testing. They're obviously using the Ferrari power unit, but also the design of the car is really reliable and it looks to be really competitive as well in the hands of Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon. That car looks really strong. And I'll say the same about Racing Bulls as well. Really reliable, looked competitive. I mean, they've got rookie Arvid Lindblad in the car this year, but he seemed to be really comfortable with the car, did a mammoth job on the last day of testing, did like over 160 laps because he was in the car the full day. But he seems to be taking to things really, really well. So yeah, VCarb and Haas looking competitive, and I feel like they're going to be the ones that sort of lead the midfield. Teams that didn't really stand out for me, and they are Alpine and Cadillac, and this is no hate towards them, right? I think it's just that neither had huge standout moments for me. Alpine looked decent, but I think I'm just cautious about having hope with Alpine because they've had such a bad run lately. And with Cadillac, I think it's mainly just because they have some more work to do on the car. There were a lot of issues that sort of came up during all three sets of tests. But that's what the tests are for. But I think because of that and the fact they didn't have a lot of on-track action, it meant that there was nothing that super stood out for me. So it's hard to kind of get a read. I think Alpine will be in the midfield because they look decent enough. They have switched over to that Mercedes engine this season, so they're going to be hoping that will give them a little bit of an extra boost, which it seems to be doing. Whether or not the car design is going to work is a different thing altogether, and I think that with all of the teams. With Cadillac, I can't tell. I don't think they're going to do badly. Like, I don't think they're going to be right at the back. However, I can't figure out exactly where they'll be, and I think some of the issues that they're dealing with, whether or not they can sort them out before the Australian Grand Prix, is going to play a really big part in how they do this season. But what is going to work to their advantage is the fact that they have Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez in that car, and having two really, really experienced drivers who have worked with top teams is a huge benefit to them, and it's part of the reason why they obviously hired those two specific drivers, because they come with that wealth of experience. They know what it's like to work under pressure, they know what it's like to help development on a car. And the thing is, I think neither of them looked super concerned or worried. Both of them were saying, look, you know, it is what testing's for. We're glad the issues are coming out now, the team is glad the issues are coming out now. And Cadillac said themselves, you know, they're really happy with where they are. They had teams coming over and congratulating them, because unlike Audi, who obviously took over the Sauber outfit, Cadillac are a completely new team. They didn't buy out another team. They're coming on as the 11th team on the grid, so everything really was from scratch. So I think the fact that they've managed to build all of this up and do what they're doing this season is impressive in itself. But of course, you're going to expect teething problems along the way with the car and just, you know, trackside operations, things like that. You're going to kind of expect those things to crop up as they figure out the best way to approach them and solve those issues. So I do have hope. Really, I think the team that I am most concerned about at this point is Aston Martin. I do not know how this season is going to go for them. They're a team that have been chasing being a front runner since they joined the grid, and I spoke about this on the last episode. So the hope was that Honda would be a good move for them, and that having their own engine provider would give them more of an advantage compared to being a customer team. Right now though, it's really dependent on Honda to fix the reliability issues with that engine, and I can't wrap my head around the fact that it seems like that car is not built well around that engine if it is struggling with cooling that engine, and they're having to have so many cooling vents open. But we'll wait and see. Australia is the first race out in like 2 weeks time now, which is crazy. I'm so excited though, because the field actually looks really decent. I do think we're gonna have teams being quite close to each other. I do think there's gonna be a lot of steep learning curves for all of the teams, because in a new regulation cycle, that's what happens. You're trying something completely new and you're figuring it out, and then suddenly you figure out what's working, what isn't, what's working with another team that could work with your team, and you make gains really, really quickly. So 2026 is going to be an even bigger development race than Formula 1 usually is because of that new set of regulations. And look, Ferrari seem to be sort of leading the way with some of that. They had their little Macarena wing. If you guys haven't seen it, have a look online. Basically, they had a rear wing that they tested when Lewis Hamilton was in the car that seemed to flip upside down and then open when he was using active aero, and it only did 1 or 2 laps, but it made people really stop and stare at it. Ollie Bettman, who was behind Lewis Hamilton when that wing was open, genuinely thought that it was broken for a second. But it's quite an innovative idea. It's within the regulations, but we didn't see it after Lewis used it that 1 or 2 laps that he did, because then he went into the garage and had a lot of things change. So we don't know whether that's gonna come up or not. They've done some cool things with their diffuser. There's everything going on with Mercedes, and whether or not the compression ratio on the engine is legal or not. But if that's allowed, you know, that's another grey area that our team has found, and those things will be exploited, and we'll see those gains. We'll see the FIA maybe clamp down on a couple of things, but it's what makes Formula 1 so exciting, in my opinion. I genuinely am excited for this season. I didn't know what to expect coming into testing, because you don't know which teams are really going to nail it and which teams are going to struggle, but it looks like all of the teams seem to have a good handle on what they're doing at the moment and where they want to go, barring the Honda engine and the Aston Martin right now. But I'm excited. It'll be good to see what actually happens in Australia, because that race isn't going to give us everything and tell us exactly what's going on, but it will give us a way better idea of what the vague pecking order is like. So that is going to be super exciting to see. Before I finish this episode though, my predictions for my Google form for all of your 2026 F1 predictions is now out. Please fill it in. We'll go through it next week in the podcast episode. Thank you guys so much for listening, and you'll empower, and I'll see you guys the next time you're summoned to the steward's office.